Hi guys, so today we're going to be looking at making a base for our stand for our invention project. I don't know if you can hear, but the weather's not really as nice anymore and it's raining quite loudly on the roof, so hopefully that's not distracting. So we're going to be using the lathe today. The lathe is something we do use in school and you can certainly use for future projects, but it does often come up in questions about a process called wasting. And wasting is any process in making where you remove stuff, generally where what is removed becomes unworkable. Okay, so if you're cutting something down, not necessarily a wasting process because you could be keeping the offcuts. Sanding is a wasting process. Wood turning is a wasting process. So here's a little example thing I've made to show you what we're going to be working on. So this is a little coat rack design that I started working on. Basically, we're going to look at this base piece here. So we're going to be making a curved wooden base on the lathe, again out of the same piece of wood. So this is made out of the same stuff, that workbench material. So I'm going to be prepping this, placing it on the lathe, talking through some of the process of the lathe. Obviously no one's got a lathe at home. If you have, very cool, but I don't think you do. So it's a revision lesson. You can carry on making your product if you want. There's also an extension video posted which is how to do some SketchUp models of your idea. This is a revision lesson and you will have flashcards that come up throughout the video. You can pause, record the information, and that's fantastic revision. So let's go. So I'm going to talk you through some of the parts of the lathe. All I've done so far is I've taken a facing plate, which as you saw was a little plate that threads onto here, and attached a piece of wood that is a square. I'm actually going to use a parting off tool to make this round because my bandsaw blade is blunt. A more advisable way of doing it is to get this cut roughly round on your bandsaw and then sand it roughly, so you start with a circle, much safer to work with. But if you've used one quite a lot, it's possible to do it in this way by just starting and parting through from the front to cut a small circle. Okay, if we look over here, so this is called the headstock of the machine. Now you can have a centre on there or you can have a facing plate. This particular one rotates round this way and you can do bowl turning over the edge here so you can get a larger radius. So you've got the headstock and the tailstock. The tailstock, if I was doing a spindle or something like a banister that would run between those two pieces, then I would mount it between my centre there and my live centre. The live centre has the ability to spin, and then I can tighten that up using the tailstock hand wheel down here, which allow me to tighten it. I can also use that to drill through perfect centres onto pieces of work that I'm working on. Okay, a few other important features to think about. This is the tool rest. This is a very important thing, and it's very important this is used safely. So the tool rest needs to be aligned so that the centre of the workpiece is aligned with the top of the tool. So before I start working with any tool, when I rest it on the tool rest, the top part of the tool needs to be aligned with the dead centre of the spindle, which that currently isn't at the moment. Otherwise you get a lot of snagging and it can be quite dangerous. You also need to make sure that you've got a minimal gap along here. The idea would be a couple of millimetres, and keep adjusting that as you go. Otherwise you have the danger of your tool getting caught in that area and being levered up, or your fingers caught. And when you're working with your tool must remain at 90 degrees to your piece of work. If you're working at an angle like that, it's got more danger of being snagged. So occasionally you'll work at an angle like this. Working like that is just going to get your tool snagged, cause damage to your work, and make a mess. Now you will have seen that there was a black and white hose attached to my lathe. That's an extraction system I've set up to try and reduce some of the dust. It's very important that you understand safe working with the machine, and there's often exam questions in that. So I'm going to talk briefly about PPE, which everyone's heard a lot about at the moment, which is personal protective equipment. The guaranteed 100% thing you must have at all times using any piece of machinery is a pair of goggles. Okay, so you need some safety goggles, good, clear, scratch-free safety goggles. Okay, when we're sanding, it's going to produce a lot of particles that the extractor may not even be able to pick up. So then we also need to be wearing a dust mask, ideally a respirator, which has a thing in so you can actually breathe properly, it doesn't steam up. But a dust mask is good when we're working. Yeah, pokes the old ears out. doesn't make for the best audio on a video. And optionally, for this machine, you can also wear, for extra safety, some ear defenders. So hopefully, as you can see from the time lapse, I've parted that off now down to a cylinder. There's a couple of steps in there, which doesn't matter because I'm making it rounded. So I started off a bit far in, and I thought actually I can afford to make it slightly larger. I'm now going to use the same tool to get some steps coming out this way. Remembering, at the start, you'll have seen me centre that tool rest height, so that when I part off, my tool sits right in the centre. Without that, it's quite dangerous, as I said, and it snags. So I'm now going to start to round that off. You can see that wood turning is quite a messy process. So all of that PPE is really important to make sure that those chips don't fly into your eyes and you stay nice and safe. So the tool that I actually used in the end for that was a bowl gouge, which is a nice tool for carving the internal of bowls, but I find actually you can get quite nice concave radiuses with it as well. You won't need to know about the specific tools other than just the term wood turning chisel in your exam. So I'm happy with the shape. I haven't got any tear through on the end grain, and the grain's starting to show itself nicely. So I'm now going to start doing some sanding and finishing on the lathe. At this stage, it's really important that you move the tool guard out of the way because I do not want to get my fingers caught in that gap. So I'm going to be removing the tool guard, putting on my dust mask, getting some sandpaper, making sure my extraction is hooked up, and I'm going to start smoothing this off and finishing it, which you'll see on the time lapse. So now I've taken out my live centre and I put my chuck in instead, like this chuck of a standard drill. I'm going to place in a 6mm drill bit because that's the size dowel that I'm going to use, or I may use a steel rod and tap it, I haven't decided yet. And that aligned will allow me to drill into the centre perfectly neatly. So finally, to attach those pieces together, I'm going to use a tap and die set. So a tap will cut an internal thread inside something. So I'm going to put the internal thread inside this part of the wood, and the die is going to cut the external thread, effectively making like a bolt. So I'm going to do that on this piece of brass, which is 6mm as well. I'll do that on both. Okay, so to recap in this video, we have looked at wood turning processes, the use of PPE, and a very basic look at how taps and dies work to create a threaded bar to fix our base onto here. So there's the first part of my base. You can see this is much more nicely finished than everything else because I haven't varnished any of this yet, but the whole thing's going to have a lovely finish when it's all done. All still working well. Obviously, that base is not going to support the whole thing, so I'm considering the idea, instead of having a large base, of having a drilled rebate in here with some super strong magnets in, and then fitting a magnetic strip running along, well, a steel strip running along my workbench top, so I can just put that on wherever I want and move it around. So I'm going to have a look on eBay and see if I can get some nice strong magnets. As we've gone through, the revision cards have popped up, and you should have paused, or you can go back and do so now, and recorded the revision that's on there. If you're making your own product at home, I hope it's going well, and I'd love to see some pictures of it. Okay, cheers.